The first mistake the aliens made was believing silence meant weakness. Human space looked empty. No warning beacons. No patrol fleets. No walls of fire waiting at the border. Just stars, dust, and long stretches of quiet darkness. To the invading armada, it felt like an invitation. What they did not know was that every second of that silence was carefully designed. Far beneath the surface of Mars, in a command chamber carved into ancient stone, the human defense network came alive. Thousands of data streams flowed into a single tactical sphere. Ship movements, energy fluctuations, gravitational distortions so small no alien sensor would ever notice them. Human eyes noticed. Fleet Commander Elena Ward stood at the center of the room, hands clasped behind her back. She did not raise her voice. She did not rush. She simply watched. "They've crossed the boundary," an officer said quietly. Elena nodded once. "Mark the time." On the display, a red line vanished as the alien fleet passed into human-controlled space. 200 warships. Massive. Ancient. Confident. They moved like a spear, tight formation, shield strong, weapons charged. "They believe the corridor is undefended," another officer said. Elena allowed herself a small smile. Good. The aliens had studied humans for decades. They believed humanity was clever but unstable, creative but disorganized, strong in bursts, weak over time. They believed humans reacted instead of planned. They were wrong. For 11 weeks, humans had watched the alien empire prepare. Every ship built. Every fuel depot filled. Every doctrine unchanged for thousands of years. Humans learned one simple truth. The aliens did not adapt. That made them predictable. Out in the dark corridor, the alien fleet advanced deeper. Their commanders felt uneasy, but pride kept them moving. They scanned the stars and saw nothing. No resistance. No traps. No challenge. They mistook absence for failure. What they could not see were the human machines sleeping inside asteroids. Not ships, too obvious. Not stations, too large. But small, silent systems built with one purpose: observation. Humans had learned long ago that the best battlefield was the one your enemy didn't know they were standing on. Inside one such asteroid, Lieutenant Jonah Reyes watched the data scroll across his screen. He had been alone for weeks, surrounded by stone and silence. Now his heart beat faster. "They're exactly where we predicted," he whispered. He sent a single confirmation pulse. Across human space, the message spread instantly. Phase 1 was live. The first disappearance happened quietly. A small alien scout ship drifted slightly off formation. Its engines flickered. For less than a second, space behind it bent in an unnatural way. Then the ship was gone. No explosion. No signal. Just absence. On the alien flagship, confusion rippled through the command deck. Sensors showed debris but no weapon fire. No enemy signatures. The crew blamed equipment failure. Humans counted. Then another ship vanished. Then another. Each loss occurred at the edges. Always isolated. Always silent. The alien fleet tightened formation, their confidence cracking. Fear crept in, unfamiliar and unwelcome. "What are we fighting?" one alien officer demanded. No one answered. Because there was nothing to see. Human weapons at this stage did not destroy. They removed. They folded space just enough to separate matter from reality itself. It was not stronger technology. It was smarter use of physics. Back on Mars, Elena watched the enemy formation compress. "They're reacting exactly as expected," she said calmly. "Casualties?" an officer asked. Elena didn't look away. "Minimal. And that's the point." The aliens still believed this was harassment. Probing. Psychological pressure. They still believed the war hadn't started. They were wrong again. Human strategy was never about dramatic openings. Humans did not roar. They waited. They weakened. They shaped the battlefield until victory was inevitable. By the time the alien fleet realized something was deeply wrong, their escape paths were already gone. Hidden human strike groups had sealed jump points hours earlier. Communication relays were being quietly intercepted. Navigation data was being altered by fractions so small it escaped notice. To the aliens, everything still looked normal. To humans, the war was already ending. Elena finally spoke again. "Begin containment." Across the corridor, space itself seemed to close in, not violently, not visibly, but decisively. The alien fleet was no longer advancing into human territory. They were trapped inside it. And humanity was just getting started. The alien fleet didn't slow down because they wanted to. They slowed down because the corridor stopped making sense. Their navigation computers insisted they were moving forward, but the star positions outside the viewports shifted in ways that felt wrong. Not dramatically, just enough to make experienced officers glance twice, then a third time, then quietly avoid looking at each other. The alien admiral, Varric Sale, stood rigid at the center of the flagship's bridge. His species valued calm as proof of superiority. Panic was considered a weakness of young races. But superiority did not explain why 17 ships were missing. "Report," Varric ordered. A sensor chief stepped forward, hands trembling despite training. "No enemy vessels detected. No weapon trails. We are seeing localized gravitational ripples. Small. Controlled." Varric's jaw tightened. Controlled by whom? Silence. A younger officer tried to save face. Perhaps automated defenses. Old human minds. Primitive systems. Varric turned slowly, eyes cold. Primitive systems do not erase ships without sound. He faced the main display again. 200 warships had entered. Now there were fewer. Not enough to cripple the fleet, but enough to stab at confidence. The corridor still looked empty. That was the worst part. A threat you could see could be measured. This was like being hunted by the dark itself. "Bring our scouts back," Varric said. "No more lone vessels. Titan formation. Maximum shields." The fleet obeyed, clustering like animals in tall grass. And that was exactly what humans wanted. On Mars, Fleet Commander Elena Ward watched the shape change. The enemy was compressing, pulling closer together, closing their vulnerable gaps. Captain Idris Kwan, her strategy lead, leaned in. "They're adapting faster than we assumed." Elena's expression didn't change. "They aren't adapting. They're doing what their doctrine allows. They're still trying to win the same way." "And us?" Idris asked. Elena tapped the holographic sphere, zooming in on the corridor. Hundreds of tiny marks appeared, human assets too small for alien systems to classify as a threat. "Us," she said softly, "we're not trying to win the same way twice." A technician spoke from the far station. "Containment grid is holding. All jump exits remain sealed. Quantum intercept is active." Elena nodded. "Then give them their first answer." A single transmission went out. Not a threat. Not an insult. A sentence delivered in perfect alien language, without emotion. "You are inside human space. You are not leaving." On the alien flagship, the message played through the bridge speakers. The bridge froze. Varric Sale felt the room change. His officers stopped pretending. Their breathing quickened. Their eyes widened. Even the most disciplined warriors could not ignore a voice that spoke from nowhere. "Trace it," Varric snapped. "We can't," the communications officer said, voice tight. "It came from everywhere. It used the corridor itself as a relay." Varric stared ahead, mind racing. To use space as a relay meant deep manipulation of the environment. The humans had prepared. They hadn't simply defended the corridor. They had turned it into a weapon. "Admiral," the sensor chief said, forcing composure, "we are detecting energy blooms ahead. Multiple points. Like engines, but not moving." "Stations?" Varric asked. "No. Too small. Too many." Varric's instincts finally screamed what pride didn't want to hear. They were surrounded. He spoke carefully, choosing authority over fear. Weapons free. Target any anomaly. Fire on anything that looks artificial. The fleet opened fire. Bright beams and heavy plasma tore into the darkness, ripping apart harmless rocks and ancient dust clouds. Explosions bloomed, scattering debris. The corridor lit up with false victory. Humans watched without concern. Jonah Reyes, still inside his hidden asteroid post, observed the chaos. His screen filled with data, weapon cycles, firing patterns, heat signatures, reaction times. "They're wasting fuel," he murmured. "They're exhausting their own crews." He transmitted the analysis. On Mars, Elena read it and nodded. "Now," she said, "we give them something real to shoot at." Phase 2 began with a failure. In the alien fleet, one heavy cruiser suddenly lost power. Its lights went dark. Its shields dropped. It drifted, helpless. Then a second cruiser flickered. Then a third. No damage. No impact. Just systems dying like candles in a wind. "Electronic warfare," someone shouted. Varrock turned sharply. "How?" "We're shielded." The sensor chief's voice shook. "Not through space. Through us." The words hit like a punch. The humans weren't hacking from outside. They were already inside the fleet's network. Not by breaking encryption with brute force, but by planting a tiny piece of code weeks earlier, through captured tradecoms, false distress signals, imitation beacons. The aliens had installed patches and updates from what they believed were neutral sources. Human deception had been patient. Now it was precise. A human voice came again, calm and almost kind. "We studied you. You do not change. That is why you lose." Varrock's fists clenched. "Seal internal systems. Disconnect the fleet." "We can't disconnect everything," an officer replied. "Our formation requires shared targeting and shield harmonics." Varrock realized the trap's beauty. Their own strength, coordination, was also their weakness. To isolate meant losing efficiency. To stay connected meant being controlled. Elena Ward watched the internal collapse begin. She didn't cheer. Her mind was already on the next step. Because the goal wasn't to destroy their ships. The goal was to destroy their certainty. Idris Kwan spoke quietly. "They'll try something desperate soon." Elena nodded. "Yes. So we let them believe they found a crack." On the edge of the corridor, one jump point, only one, flickered open, faint and unstable. Not enough for a full fleet. But enough for a few ships. A deliberate flaw in the net. A doorway left open on purpose. In the alien fleet, the discovery spread like wildfire. "A jump corridor," an officer shouted. "A way out." Varrock's eyes narrowed. He didn't trust gifts. But the fleet was bleeding, ships failing, crews exhausted, fear spreading. Even a suspicious exit looked like hope. "How stable?" he demanded. "Barely," the navigation officer said. "But a small group could make it. Maybe 10 ships. Maybe 20. Varrock's pride battled his survival instincts. If he fled, he would be disgraced. If he stayed, he might lose everything. He made the only decision he could justify. "We will send a strike group through," he said. "Not to escape. To flank. To find their control source and destroy it." His officers clicked and nodded, relieved to have purpose. 20 ships peeled away from the formation and angled toward the flickering jump point. On Mars, alarms did not sound. Elena watched the move and whispered, "Good." Captain Idris leaned closer. "They're taking the door." Elena's face was unreadable. "That door doesn't lead out." In the corridor, the 20 alien ships accelerated and entered the jump. Space folded. Light twisted. And for a moment, the alien crews felt hope. Then their ships reappeared. Not outside the corridor. Not behind human lines. But deeper inside the trap, into a region of dense interference where their sensors became blind and their shields struggled to hold. They had not found an exit. They had been guided into a cage within the cage. On the alien flagship, Varric Sale watched the strike group vanish and reappear on a new section of the map. His throat went dry. That was a false corridor, he whispered. His fleet had just been moved like pieces on a board. And the player was invisible. A final message came through, soft and steady, like a verdict. You crossed into our home. We did not panic. We prepared. Varric Sale stared at the dark space ahead. For the first time in his long military career, he understood something terrifying. Humans weren't winning by strength. They were winning by control. And if control belonged to humans, then the war had been over long before the first ship crossed the border. The alien fleet no longer moved like a weapon. It moved like a wounded animal. Inside the flagship, Admiral Varric Sale stood in silence as reports stacked one over another. Systems were failing in patterns that made no sense. Navigation drifted by fractions that slowly pulled ships out of alignment. Weapons powered down for seconds at a time, never long enough to justify panic, but long enough to destroy trust. Trust was everything. Once it cracked, nothing held. Admiral, the logistics officer said carefully, fuel efficiency has dropped by 8% across the fleet. We are compensating, but we shouldn't need to, Varric finished. No, the officer admitted. We shouldn't. The humans were not attacking their hulls. They were attacking assumptions. Every alien doctrine was built on certainty. Sensors were accurate. Formations were reliable. Space obeyed rules that had not changed in 10,000 years. Humans were rewriting those rules without announcing it. On Mars, Elena Ward watched the data with quiet intensity. The alien fleet's performance was degrading exactly as predicted. No dramatic collapse. No single moment of failure. Just erosion. Captain Idris Kwan spoke softly. Crew fatigue is rising faster than models suggested. Good, Elena replied. That means they're thinking instead of reacting. And if they stop thinking? Elena's eyes hardened. Then they break. Deep within the corridor, the isolated alien strike group struggled to regain coherence. Their sensors returned fragments of information, half images, distorted signals, echoes that contradicted each other. This space is wrong, one of their captains said. The math doesn't align. The math aligns, another snapped. We don't. They tried to fire on anomalies, but targets blurred and vanished. Engines overheated trying to compensate for phantom gravity wells. Shields drained faster than expected. And through it all, the humans never showed themselves. That was the most terrifying part. Back on the flagship, Varric finally spoke the words his officers feared. Send a message. They stared at him. To whom? One asked. The humans. Silence stretched. No alien admiral had ever initiated communication from a position of weakness. But Varric had learned something essential. Pride was already killing them. Send it, he repeated. The message was formal. Controlled. Carefully worded to avoid humiliation. Human command. Identify your terms. This conflict has escalated beyond projections. On Mars, the message appeared without fanfare. No one celebrated. Elena read it once, then handed control to another officer. You answer, she said. The officer hesitated. With respect, Commander, what should I say? Elena thought for a moment. Tell them the truth. The reply went out. This conflict ended the moment you crossed our boundary. What you are experiencing now is the cost of not believing that. On the alien bridge, the message landed like a blade. Varric closed his eyes briefly. Not rage. Not fear. Understanding. The humans had never intended to fight ship to ship. That was never the battlefield. The battlefield was preparation, patience, and psychology. They had walked into a story whose ending was already written. Admiral, the tactical officer said, voice strained, internal cohesion is failing. Some captains are requesting independent action. Varric opened his eyes. Independent action meant chaos. Chaos meant death. Deny all requests, he ordered. We hold formation. But even as he spoke, another alert appeared. A human vessel. Finally. It emerged not from hyperspace, but from plain sight, small, angular, unarmed by alien standards. It drifted forward alone, broadcasting openly. No shields. No weapons charging. Just a signal. The bridge erupted. A decoy. A trap. Destroy it. Varrock raised his hand. Wait. The human ship transmitted visuals. A single human figure appeared on the main display. Calm. Unarmed. Looking directly into the camera. My name is Aisha Rahman, the human said. I speak for Earth Defense. Her voice was steady. Not triumphant. Not threatening. Just honest. You came here believing we would fight you the way you fight everyone else, she continued. We don't. We never have. Varrock studied her face. No deception markers. No stress tells. You trespassed, Aisha said. We responded. Not with anger. With preparation. An officer whispered, it's unshielded. One shot. Varrock cut him off. No. Aisha continued. We are not here to annihilate you. We are here to end this before it becomes what your history demands it be. Varrock stepped closer to the display. What do you want? He asked. Aisha met his gaze. You to stop. The simplicity stunned the bridge. Withdraw your fleet, she said. Power down your weapons. Allow us to escort you out. And if we refuse? Varrock asked. Aisha didn't hesitate. Then we continue doing this. Quietly. Slowly. Until your fleet cannot function and your empire must explain how 200 ships entered human space and never returned. Silence swallowed the bridge. The human ship waited. It did not maneuver. It did not raise defenses. It trusted the position humanity had already earned. Varrock realized something profound. This was not mercy. This was confidence. The kind that only comes from certainty. Around him, his officers waited for his command. Generations of doctrine pressed down on him, demanding resistance, demanding honor through destruction. But honor meant nothing if no one survived to remember it. He exhaled. Lower weapons, he said quietly. Shock rippled through the bridge. Admiral. Lower them, he repeated. One by one, the alien fleet powered down. Weapon signatures faded. Energy output dropped. Across the corridor, human systems adjusted instantly. Pressure eased. Gravitational distortions softened. The cage loosened, but did not open. Aisha nodded. Good choice, she said. On Mars, Elena watched the feeds and allowed herself a slow breath. Begin extraction protocols, she ordered. Captain Idris smiled faintly. They won't forget this. Elena shook her head. No, she said. They'll misunderstand it for decades. She turned away from the display. And that's fine. Because the lesson wasn't meant to be understood quickly. It was meant to be remembered painfully. The alien fleet began its escorted retreat, surrounded by human systems they still could not see, guided by a species they would never underestimate again. The war had not ended with fire. It had ended with realization. And realization, humans knew, was the most powerful weapon of all. The retreat was slower than the invasion. That alone told the aliens everything. Their fleet moved under human escort, not pulled, not pushed, but guided, like something fragile being carried through a storm it no longer controlled. Navigation data flowed from human systems directly into alien consoles, correcting errors before they became disasters. It was humiliating. It was also necessary. Admiral Varrock Sale stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched human symbols overlay his tactical display. Not commands. Suggestions. Adjustments offered before his own officers could even request them. Humans were not just controlling space. They were anticipating thought. Admiral, the navigation officer said, voice low, without their corrections, we would already have lost 6 more ships. Varrock nodded once. Then follow them exactly. Each order tasted bitter. But bitterness was survivable. Extinction was not. As the fleet moved, damage reports continued to arrive. No hull breaches. No catastrophic losses. But internal systems across dozens of ships were compromised in ways no engineer could fully explain. Alien technology had not failed. It had been outplanned. In one engineering bay, technicians stared at a system log that made no sense. Adjustments had been made weeks earlier, tiny ones. Fractional changes that seemed harmless at the time. Optimizations suggested by what they thought were neutral data sources. Those changes had allowed humans to slip inside. Not violently. Patiently. On Mars, Elena Ward reviewed post-engagement projections. The numbers confirmed what she already knew. This battle would echo. Casualties? She asked. Minimal, Captain Idris Kwan replied. On both sides. Elena nodded. Good. You're not satisfied, Idris observed. I am, she said. Just not surprised. Human history had taught them that victory did not come from dramatic moments alone. It came from preparation people never noticed and sacrifices people never celebrated. This had been one of those victories. On the alien flagship, Varrock received another transmission. Not from Earth Defense. From his own empire. High Command demanded explanation. He stood still for a long time before responding. Then he spoke honestly. We underestimated them, he said. Not in strength. In mindset. There was outrage. Disbelief. Accusations. Varrock accepted them all. Because none of it changed the truth. The humans had not beaten them in open war because open war was never necessary. Humanity had turned a border into a lesson. And lessons spread. As the fleet crossed back toward the boundary, the corridor began to feel normal again. Stars aligned properly. Gravity behaved. Space obeyed familiar rules. The trap was being dismantled. Humans did not keep weapons active longer than needed. They had already made their point. Aisha Rahman's image appeared one final time. You will be escorted to the edge, she said. After that, you are on your own. Varrock studied her face. Why let us leave? Aisha didn't answer immediately. Because, she said finally, we want you to remember this moment. And because survivors carry better warnings than wreckage. The transmission ended. The last human systems disengaged. The alien fleet crossed the boundary and felt the weight lift all at once. Silence returned. Real silence. Varrock's sail remained on the bridge long after the stars stopped shaking. He had commanded fleets for centuries. He had conquered worlds. He had broken civilizations. But this defeat had not taken anything visible. It had taken certainty. And certainty, once lost, never fully returned. Far away, on Earth, the public never saw most of what had happened. No explosions. No heroic last stands. No dramatic footage. Just a brief statement released days later. A potential incursion was resolved through strategic deterrence. No further action required. Most people moved on. Humans always did. But in alien space, academies rewrote doctrines. Admirals studied human unpredictability with quiet fear. Borders hardened. Explorers hesitated. And whenever someone suggested testing humanity again, a single question always followed. Why was their space empty? No one ever had a good answer. Because the truth was unsettling. Human space was never empty. It was prepared. Years passed. Not quietly. Not peacefully. But carefully. Across the galaxy, trade resumed. Borders shifted. Old rivalries flared and faded. Empires continued doing what empires always did, measuring, expanding, testing. Except around one region of space. Human space. No fleets gathered near its borders anymore. No accidental incursions occurred. Exploration probes adjusted their trajectories long before reaching human-controlled corridors. It wasn't fear. It was respect mixed with uncertainty. And uncertainty was dangerous. In the halls of alien academies, the incident was studied under many names. Some called it the silent reversal. Others labeled it the corridor event. Official records avoided calling it a defeat. Unofficial ones were more honest. They called it the moment we lost control. Admiral Varric Sale lived long enough to see those records written. He no longer commanded fleets. He taught. His lectures were quiet. No grand speeches. No dramatic warnings. He simply showed data. Charts of ship losses without battles. Communication maps that collapsed without interference. Tactical diagrams where every correct decision still led to failure. And then he would say the same sentence, every time. We did everything right. And it did not matter. Students hated that sentence. They argued with it. Questioned it. Tried to find errors. Varric let them. Because humans had taught him something important. Understanding could not be forced. It had to be earned. On Earth, Fleet Commander Elena Ward retired 2 years after the incident. No parade marked her departure. No medals large enough to explain what she had prevented. She preferred it that way. On her last day, Captain Idris Kwan walked with her through the quiet halls beneath Mars. "Do you think they'll come back someday?" he asked. Elena considered the question carefully. "Yes," she said. "But not the same way." "How so?" "They'll come with hesitation. With questions. With uncertainty." She smiled faintly. And uncertainty slows aggressors more than fear ever could. Human defense doctrine quietly changed after that day. Not toward greater firepower, but deeper integration. Faster learning. Wider observation. Humans didn't believe they were unbeatable. They believed they were adaptable. And that belief shaped everything. Far beyond human space, a young alien explorer stood aboard a research vessel, staring at a star map. Her assignment was simple: chart safe passages near the outer human boundary. She had grown up hearing warnings. Humans are unpredictable. Humans prepare too much. Humans never fight the war you expect. She didn't feel fear as she studied the map. She felt curiosity. "What makes them different?" she asked her mentor. The older alien paused. "They don't wait for danger to arrive," he said. "They imagine it. Then they prepare for the version that scares them the most." The explorer nodded slowly. "That sounds exhausting." Her mentor allowed a rare smile. "Yes," he said. "Which is why no one wants to find out what happens when they finally decide to rest." Back on Earth, the public remembered the incident only vaguely. A few documentaries. A few speculation forums. Some exaggerated stories. Humans argued, as always. About budgets. About ethics. About whether preparation invited conflict. They argued because that was what humans did. But quietly, without needing agreement, they kept preparing. Because humanity had learned long ago that survival wasn't about being stronger than everyone else. It was about being ready when strength failed. Somewhere in deep space, a derelict alien scout drifted, one of the first ships lost in the corridor. Its hull remained intact, systems frozen in time. No weapon scars. No explosion marks. Just absence where certainty used to be. It would never be recovered. And that, too, was part of the lesson. The galaxy slowly came to understand something fundamental. Humanity did not dominate space because it was the loudest, or the strongest, or the most ancient. Humanity dominated space because it treated every unknown as a future threat, and every threat as a problem to be solved before it arrived. By the time anyone realized humans were dangerous, they were already too late. The war had been over long before it began. And the stars remembered.